everyone, my name is Jenna, but you guys can call me Jen, and welcome back to my channel. Welcome to a video that I have been wanting to film for a while. But do you guys ever have that pure panic when somebody's like, what's your favorite book of all time? Because that was me standing in my library today, looking at my shelves going, what are my top 10 favorite books of all time? I honestly don't even know if this list is exactly what it should be. I have 12 books with me because there are 2 honorary mentions that my brain just kept going, like what about this one though? They're favorites of all time. They're just not in the top 10. If that makes any sense. So we're gonna go through them. It is a combination of fantasy, of middle grade, of classics, and I think there's one regular adult novel that made its way onto this list, which is so much fun, and I am really excited to get to it. I am going to kind of sort these in a way that makes sense to me in my brain. So we're gonna do the top 10, and really there is no order unless you're talking about the top 2 because there's an order to those. Those are, you guys can probably guess what they are. The top 2 definitely, but everything else just kind of is in the realm. You know? So we have 12 books to talk about. Let's talk about the 2 honorary mentions before we even get into this. 2 honorary mentions, number 11, number 12, sort of a thing. We have a classic and we have a chunky boy fantasy. So that chunky boy fantasy is Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. This book, all right, this book changed me as a person. I fell in love with fantasy audiobooks. Reading and listening to this, I found a pure love for fantasy standalone when I was reading this, because this is a fantasy standalone. It is a beautiful book and I adore this with all my heart. And honestly, this could, like, I probably am going to do favorite books of all time, but like in categories after this, and you will see this again on my favorite fantasies of all time list, of course. I definitely had to mention this in this video because it's just beautiful and I need to reread it at some point soon because it's just so good. It's so good. Everybody needs to read this. I actually even have like a book talk on this when I used to do book talks on my channel. I didn't really do them very often, but I did a book talk with this one. It was like a non-spoilery half and then a spoilery half where I just gushed about it for a long time. So if you want to go watch that, it is far, far, far back on my channel, back when I didn't know how to edit videos properly and wasn't as charismatic as I am now on camera. But oh, I just love this one so much. Okay, the next honorary mention is a classic, and it is Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. If you had asked me a few years ago to do this, this would have been probably on my list of top 10 favorite books, but since then I didn't really want to include like 800 different classics on this list, because though classics are fantastic and they are super interesting to read and really dive into and analyze, they are of course very aged and very from their time. You know, like there are many, many issues with a lot of classics out there, probably all of them if we're being real, but I just absolutely adore Oscar Wilde's work, and this was one of my favorite university reads, and I just had to include it on this list because it is a favorite book of all time and I just adore it so much. So much. Yes to this. I just remember sitting in my university class, like outside in the hallway waiting for my class to start and getting to a certain point in this book and being just astonished, and then having to sit through an entire 75-minute lecture about American literature when I was just sitting there going, I just want to keep reading Picture of Dorian Gray, I gotta figure out what happens. So I've never had that happen to me in a classic where like something has shocked me, which is awesome. So number 11 and 12 on this list. All right, let's get the other classics out of the way since we ended on a classic there. I have 3 and they are all by wonderful, wonderful women authors, and you can probably guess 2 of them. Probably guess them all if you've been around long enough, but I will talk about Jane Eyre first by Charlotte Bronte. I absolutely love this book, and this book itself is really well loved. If you look close enough, there's a bunch of pages that are literally falling out of this book because these penguin copies are trash if you're trying to read them and like well love them, you know, they will fall apart on you, but they're beautiful, so it's okay. But I love Jane Eyre so much. It is I need to reread it to like really solidify it in this position, but I've been calling it my favorite classic of all time. It's just so beautiful, and I absolutely adored it, and I loved studying this in university because it was just such a delicious book, you know, to read and get into. But I do have to reread it soon because I want to make sure that it is still my favorite classic of all time, or at least in the top 3. But the other 2 that I have, I could not include on this list, and they are Emma and Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. And I was going to automatically include Pride and Prejudice on this list because this book is like home to me, and it is so close to my top favorite classic of all time that that's probably the reason that I need to reread Jane Eyre, because I don't know if Jane Eyre is as good as Pride and Prejudice anymore. We need to reread it to find out, because I've reread this one like 3 times now, so there's that. But then when I was looking at my shelves, I'm like, I can't not include Emma too, because it is one of my favorite books ever, which makes sense as to why I'm including it on this list. But I just couldn't not, because these 2 are like basically tied for first place in my Jane Austen rankings. This one ekes out just a little bit because I've loved it longer than this one, but these are my favorite. They're just so beautiful and so lovely to dive back into, and I just adore them, and they will be forever rereads for me. And the movies and the BBC series of the 1995 Pride and Prejudice will be continuous rewatches for me, because these stories mean so much, and they are really just like the basis of my love for classics. Truly the basis of my love for classics, and I adore it so much. Now let's do the one single adult book on this, and that is The 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield. When I was looking at my shelves, I kept looking back at this one and going, yeah, that is definitely an all-time favorite book of mine. And I think I originally rated it 4.5 stars, but this is definitely a 5-star book for me. Just the reading experience for this was next level. Diane Setterfield just crafted such a beautiful story, and it feels like Jane Eyre meets Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and I love it so much. So much. Yes to this book, and I love it so much, and I can't wait to reread it and to really dive into it now that I know what happens in it. Last year, when I read this, I was shook the whole time. I annotated it, I spent my time with it, and it was so delicious, and it is definitely one of my favorite stories of all time. It is gothic, it is introspective, it is creepy at times, and it tells stories inside stories, and the twist in this is so good. There's a bunch of twists actually, and they're very delicious and well laid out and very well foreshadowed and very satisfying. You know, it's just a beautifully crafted story, and I adore it with all my heart, if you couldn't tell. All right, this is kind of a representative for an entire series, but it is my favorite book in the series, and that is Lord of the Rings. Oh, you guys. And specifically, The Two Towers. This is my favorite of the trilogy, which is shocking. I know. Me, somebody who has an issue with second books in series, like with every series that she reads, loves the second book of a series the most. We know. I love this book so much, and I love this world just unendingly, and the trilogy is just impeccable, and you guys, this definitely takes the cake, and the amount of emotions that you go through in this book specifically are just so astronomical, because I think what I really like about this one is with the Fellowship, the first one, you have the whole team together, everything's grand, and you're just going on an adventure. But it is very slow to start, which I really don't mind. I really enjoyed the beginning of The Fellowship of the Ring because it is so lovely and just wrapped in a blanket of fantasy adventure. But this one, you have the two different perspectives that split exactly down the middle in this book, which is an interesting formatting choice, in my opinion. I think today it probably would have been formatted with like the Aragorn storyline and then the Frodo storyline just back to back, like intermixed in the book. But because it's not done like that, it's literally split in two, where you have the Aragorn story first, where they're trying to find the hobbits, and then you have the Frodo and Sam story after, where they're trying to get the ring to Mordor. It is so good. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it so much. Yeah, definitely love this book unendingly. And Return of the King, the third one, it just has so many emotions attached to it that made me so deeply sad that I honestly could not even consider that one being a favorite of mine. And it's also really short, even though like there's like a gazillion appendixes at the end. Like the book itself is pretty thick, but it's like 70% of the actual book when you look at it, the actual story, and so it's shorter than all the others and it ends really fast, which made me sad. But it's like this one is the meat of the story, is where all the action is to me, and it's just so good. I love these so much. I so much, you guys. It's crazy. All right, let's go to my middle grade on this list. And I picked this one specifically because it's not my favorite in the series, but I was like, it's fine. It's just gonna represent the entire world for me because the world itself is everything to me. And it doesn't matter if I go into the first book again or the second series again, or continue on in the new series that was released, The Trials of Apollo, that is now finished as well. If I go into that one, I will never stop loving this world that Rick Riordan has created. So I brought up The Lightning Thief because this is the beginning of it all. And I love this series so much. I think my favorite in the series is the Battle of the Labyrinth for this first series of itself, but this is so good, this middle grade series. It is so funny and just humorous in ways that I cannot even explain. And I love it. I love it so much. And it's perfect. Everything about this series and this world that Rick Riordan has created is perfect. And I really chose to put this on my list, the first one, The Lightning Thief, because yes, it's not my favorite in the original canonical series. The Battle of the Labyrinth is. This book itself just represents all of the Rick Riordan universe as a whole for me. So that's why this is on here. And I will forever adore Seaweed Brain and Wise Girl until the end of time. Just, oh my god, this is just me getting emotional over books, and it's great. All right, the next two are my two favorite YA books of all time, and so much so that they've made it onto my favorite books of all time list, and they are Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor and Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. Okay, let's talk about Strange the Dreamer first. This book felt like I was reading my soul on a page, because Laszlo Strange, the main character of this book, is everything that I believe myself to be as well. Like someone who just adores books and stories so much that they devote their life to it, and they just want so desperately to go to this world that they've read about and known about but don't really know if it's real or not for so long. Is just everything. And Laini Taylor's writing is delicious, and her ending with Sarai at the end and then the lead into Muse is just so beautiful. And I can't get over this book. I've read this book twice now and I love it to death. The quotes in here are so good. I think this is my favorite YA of all time, but in a close second is Legendborn by Tracy Deonn, which I read for the first time last year. This was phenomenal. This book will forever be the one that I recommend the most to anybody. If you come up to me and say, hey, what book do you recommend? I will throw Legendborn at your face. And if you ask for something that's not YA, I have another recommendation that I will throw at your face that's gonna come up next. But those are like, this is the book that I will recommend forever on, like, what should I read that you really like? This one! Read this one! I don't even care if you don't like YA. Read this book. It is so good. It made me feel so many things, and it made me fall in love with reading again at the end of a year which we had suffered through so much hardship, you know, with the 2020 and the pandemic and all the bullshit that happened all throughout the year. This book just came in and saved my year at the end of it, and even though the whole year was a fantastic reading year and I found so many of my favorite books, this book was just so good. And by the end of it, I was sitting there just experiencing it all over my body, and I am so ready for the next one to come out in this series, because I am going to devour that thing as soon as it comes out. Drop everything reading that book, because Tracy Deonn did something with this book that awoke a monster in me, as you can tell, from the Arthurian retelling to the urban fantasy to the just impeccable characters that she has created in this world, and the magic system and the tension and the angst, and oh Everything is so good in this book. These are my favorite YA books of all time, out of any category, because you guys know I'm not a big fan of like contemporary YAs as much as I am of fantasy. So, and I mean, that goes across the board for adult as well. As you can tell, there's no romance on this list because, well, there's romance classics, but like, you know, like modern day romance, because they're favorites, like they're great books and I really enjoy them, but they're just not like the hard-hitting ones that like really affect me or really change my life. Like every single one of these books on this list, when I finished reading them, I felt different. I felt like, wow, where has this book been all my life? You know, one of those feelings. So the last two, can you guess? Can you guess what they are? Starless C and The House in the Cerulean Sea. we got books with similar titles, but okay. We're gonna talk about The House in the Cerulean Sea first because this is number 2 on my list and Starless C is number 1. Obviously, as you guys well know, but this one, along with Legendborn, I will always, always, always recommend. People ask me for a recommendation, it's going to be this or Legendborn, kind of depending who they are. Now that I realize it, like if I know that they're not really into YA, I probably won't recommend that one, but I will throw this at their face because it is so beautiful and it is such a lovely, lovely look at humanity and what it means to be kind and what it means to really love yourself as well as others, no matter what. And this book made me happy sob, and I just, everything about it, everything from the kids to Arthur to Linus to, oh no. I can't even talk about this book, you guys. It is perfect. It is perfect. And I love it so much. Oh, this is why it's my second favorite book of all time. It is so good. Oh my god. And then we come to our final book here, which is The Starless C. And you know what? This is probably the one book that, even though I adore it unendingly, I will probably never recommend to anybody because it is so polarizing with the writing specifically. Like if you're not into poetic, lyrical story creation that dabbles in telling stories alongside the main storyline that all eventually come together and make a giant puzzle, but like really does it do that or just continuously be beautiful around? Like, if you're not into beautiful lyrical prose, this is not for you because this book is packed with flowery, gorgeous writing and stories that are interspersed between these Zachary Ezra Rollins storyline, and this book is just everything to me and I adore it so much. I adore it with my entire heart, and when I finished reading this book, I felt deeply in my soul that I had found a book that would forever be my favorite book ever. Ever, ever, ever. And I need to reread this so badly. I just love it so much. It's crafted in such an incredible way, and the stories, even though they don't really make sense as you're first reading it, they make sense at the end, and I'm so excited to go back in and reread it just to really sink into the story again. I need to do so many rereads of my favorite books, really, because they're just the best. And why not live in a world where you can have your favorite books around you and to reread them at all times? Why not go back into books you absolutely adore and just relive that feeling of pure love and comfort, because you know how this book is going to end. You know you're going to love it with all your heart. And that is my rant. Reread your favorite books, you guys. It is an experience like none other. And I am so happy I made this video because this has just been me gushing about books that I absolutely love for like 20 minutes. So thanks for hanging out with me. Let me know down below what your favorite books are. Some of your favorite books are, you know, just please let me know, because I have been having a weird reading year in 2021. I have yet to find a new favorite book. The only 5-star that I've given out has been to a reread of Emma. So I need some books that will change my life. Please let me know down below what your favorite book of all time is, because I will probably add it to my TBR if I haven't read it. But guys, alright, thank you so much for hanging out. I will catch you in another video soon. Stay kind and keep on reading.